All right, great. Let's get started. Good afternoon, everyone. My name is Jamie Zimmerman, and I direct the Global Assets Project here at the New America Foundation. And on behalf of New America and all of the co-hosts of today's event, who are Save the Children, the Center for Social Development at Washington University in St. Louis, CGAP, and the MasterCard Foundation, I'm pleased to welcome everybody here today, those of you who are in the room and all of our participants who are watching over simulcast on the internet. To today's forum, Youth Savings Accounts, the Youth Development and Financial Inclusion Nexus, with a question mark on the end. Over the last year, with the support of the MasterCard Foundation, our 4 institutions have worked to explore the potential of designing and offering formal savings accounts to low-income youth, which we also call shorthand Youth Savings Accounts, or YSAs. And these accounts, these are services for low-income youth that are both appropriately designed to meet the social and economic needs of this particular population, as well as be offered in a commercially sustainable and scalable way. And we hypothesize that if it's possible to do so, then youth savings accounts could be a high leverage tool to promote multiple development goals, and hence this envisioned nexus between youth development and financial inclusion. As a culmination of what we learned over the last year and the insights we derived from it, we produced the report that all of you should have received when you came in today. The title is Youth Savings in Developing Countries, Trends in Practice, Gaps in Knowledge. And I would show it to you, but I don't have it up here with me, so I'm sure someone can. If you didn't get it, it's outside, and there will be more copies on the way out, and we'll be talking a little bit about it today. As the title suggests, we have found that the state of the field for savings services for low-income youth is quite vibrant. From small and large-scale programs offered by non-governmental institutions to a range of products offered by a real diversity of financial institutions, to both small-scale pilots and large-scale policies to promote social welfare offered by governments, creative approaches to delivering saving services to low-income youth abound around the world. And in fact, in this report, we highlight over 40 such examples, and we're really careful to provide the caveat that this is not an exhaustive list. We are sure that there are many other interesting and innovative examples out there, but we give an overview, an illustrative overview within the report. At the same time, we found that there's very little data, particularly data stemming from rigorous research that exists on whether and how youth savings accounts can contribute to achieving both of these goals, youth development and financial inclusion, or how these might differ with context. So to that end, the report also outlines these gaps in knowledge, identifying what information is still needed before we can truly understand how youth savings accounts might achieve both of these goals. So today's event will explore youth savings accounts from both of these perspectives, the youth development and financial inclusion perspectives, in more depth. So we're fortunate to bring together some of the foremost thinkers and doers on these topics to discuss and debate what we know, don't know, and what we still need to learn. We have a packed agenda today, so I just wanted to briefly summarize it and do some quick housekeeping before we get started. So we're going to kick off in just a moment with an opening keynote from Rita Roy of the MasterCard Foundation before moving into 2 panel discussions, one that will explore YSAs as a youth development tool, and then the other that will look at them from the financial inclusion and financial capability perspective. There will be a brief break in between those 2 panels, and we'll do our best to herd everyone back into the room and bring us back to order as quickly as possible so we can stay on agenda. After the second panel, Rani Deshpande of Save the Children will provide some closing remarks, and then we hope that you will all be able to join us afterwards for a cocktail reception, which will also be in this room. Throughout the day, I'd just like to ask everybody to keep in mind that we are webcasting this entire event live. And because of this, we just ask that whoever is speaking, whether you're on the stage, on one of the panels, or if you're asking a question from the audience, that you identify yourself and speak directly into the microphone. If you don't speak into the microphone, they can't hear you. So that's an important point. So let's just jump right in. I'm Very pleased to have the privilege of introducing Rita Roy to deliver today's lunch keynote. Rita is President and CEO of the MasterCard Foundation, a relatively new independent private foundation based in Toronto with assets over $3 billion. The foundation's vision is to make the global economy work for everybody by advancing effective and innovative programs in the areas of microfinance and youth education. Rita has a long history in corporate philanthropy, working on global health issues and public-private partnerships for Bristol Myers Squibb before joining Abbott, a global healthcare company, as the Divisional Vice President of Global Citizenship and Policy, a very cool title, by the way, and the Vice President of the Abbott Fund, the corporate foundation. There, she created the Citizenship and Policy Department and led Abbott's public-private initiatives related to HIV/AIDS in Africa, global product donations program, and community initiatives. And this isn't in her bio, but I just wanted to add that under Rita's leadership, the MasterCard Foundation, I believe, is charting a novel and very creative collaborative course in global philanthropy. And not only do foundation staff dedicate themselves to co-creating programs with their grantees, they are also dedicated to listening to the voice of these youth populations and the others whose lives they're committed to improving. So, Rita, we look forward to your insights today. Thank you.
Good. I always check to see whether people can see me, or because I'm not very tall, as you can see. So thank you so much, Jamie, for the introduction. It's a real pleasure to be here today. And before I start, I wanted to just take a moment and recognize our colleague, Michael Sheridan, for being named as one of Time Magazine's 100 most influential people. So congratulations. It's well deserved. And I already know that we are going to be the beneficiaries of your research and your insight. So it's terrific. We are so pleased to be part of the conversation on today's topic because in so many ways, as Jamie indicated, it speaks to the heart of the Foundation's vision, which is to make the global economy work for everyone, particularly for people who are living at the bottom of the pyramid. On one hand, we're working with partners to expand access to microfinance to people who are very poor. And on the other hand, we're also working with partners to expand access to young people to learning opportunities so that they can participate in the economy. So in some ways, when you put both these elements together, you could say that we're helping prepare young people for the market, and we're helping to prepare market institutions to serve young people. So in many ways, I guess in spirit, we think that we live in the nexus space already. We made a very deliberate decision at the Foundation that we will focus considerable resources towards improvement and the betterment of life for young people, largely because we believe that with the right tools, with the right knowledge, with the right mentoring, the social support networks, technology, young people will make a phenomenal contribution to economic growth, to social progress, and to governance in developing countries. And so we're very excited about that. What I wanted to cover before we get into the panels are just three very simple thoughts, which actually resonate very nicely with the work and the collaboration that we've experienced to date with the YouthSave Consortium. So the first point is, why now? And why is now really an opportune and a great time to create more economic opportunities for young people in the developing world? The second, the importance of authentically listening and engaging with young people, not just so that their voices are heard, but so that we get the right direction and the right insight so that our work is actually successful. And third, we believe that this nexus work, whatever we end up calling it, is going to require fresh thinking. And a lot of fresh thinking around how we enable young people, very vulnerable young people, participate in the economy and take their place in the economy. And we suspect a lot of this thinking is going to be rooted in multidisciplinary collaboration, such as what we are experiencing with the YouthSave Consortium. So for the Foundation in future, we know it's going to call on many more youth-centered approaches, which get to leverage learning and get to leverage microfinance so that they have an opportunity to improve their lives, and we absolutely propel them towards their development. So why now? In my mind, there couldn't be a more opportune moment to start to think about how we create more vibrant economic futures for young people. In part, and clearly, the urgency is most acutely felt in the developing world, particularly in Africa, where I believe young people have to represent the single most untapped resource that we have for economic and social progress. And in many ways, the demographic trends already make the case for us. I think you'll see in this report that a third of the world's population is under the age of 19. And as witnesses to history, over the next couple decades, the world's largest cohort of young people will transition into adulthood. 85% of them live in the developing world. Far too many of them are already vulnerable to poverty. Unemployment rates, as we know, are easily 3 times for young people, 3 times that of the adult unemployment rate. The World Bank is predicting that we'll need 1 billion jobs over the next decade. It's hard to fathom that type of number. And what's also fascinating to observe, while all of us here in the industrialized world, we're getting older, the rest of the world, particularly Africa, is getting younger. And even by 2030, when the Middle East and when populations in South Asia would have peaked in their youth populations, Africa will still get younger. The continent already has the fastest growing youth population, the highest number of young people living in poverty, the lowest levels of enrollment, certainly when it comes to secondary and tertiary education. And so there is great urgency, and there's great urgency now that we move quickly, but also thoughtfully, and think carefully about how it is we equip young people to access technology, to create to innovate, to think about solving problems, to communicate across, certainly across cultures, all the skills they'll need to participate in a 21st century economy, even though they may be living in an economy which is characterized by both an industrial, a pre-capitalist society, but clearly they have one foot in the modern world. And how do we get them to a place where they can achieve and enjoy sustained growth? I suspect as well that some of the answers of enabling young people to participate in the economy will come from them, which brings me to my second point about listening. Over the past year, the foundation, certainly my colleagues and I, have had the privilege in many ways to travel to visit some of our projects in West and East Africa, and we've spent quite a bit of time with clients, and many of those clients are young people, and to listen to their stories. And so whether it's been in Dakar, spending time with young social entrepreneurs, and I do mean social entrepreneurs, these were young people we engage in conversation who would, I would say, had definitely had secondary school education, maybe 1 or 2 had university education, but to listen to them talk about how they perceived the world and how they perceived creating a better world and the ideas they had for their social businesses. And at the same time, and these were young people who by no means came from privileged backgrounds. They absolutely came from pretty humble backgrounds. But on the one hand, talking about their passion and what it is they wanted to see and how they wanted to help their communities, but at the same time talking about their frustration and not being taken seriously by financial institutions, which we found kind of heartening. When we were just not too long ago in Kalaware, which is an urban slum outside of in Kampala, not too far off of Makerere University, we spent a day with some teenage girls, their girls' club, talking about at a program where they were learning about life skills and access to finance. And we talked about their own views, and they had many different ideas about, these were young women who were already economically active, some were in school, some were doing both. Talk about their ideas for what kinds of businesses they would like to run. All of them talked about the need to learn how to manage money. And so you must have met some of the same young people I'm talking about, and maybe you've met some of them. These are young people who are terribly dynamic, extremely resourceful, and surprisingly and inspiringly undaunted by some of the challenges they face day in and day out. And yet determined to not only improve their own lives, but to make a contribution to their family. And here's some of the things that we learned. For one, their lives, particularly and many of the lives, I suspect, of young people living in poverty, is characterized by transition, and there isn't quite the same linear school-to-work progression. In fact, most of them already had adult responsibilities, and so some were in school, but nearly all of them were economically active, contributing to their families' welfare. Others, on top of that, were dealing with different types of adult responsibilities. Far too many of the young girls were either pregnant or already parents, and so they had a new set of responsibilities which were going to in many ways determine some of the choices they had to make. All of them, you could say very quite simply, were earning and learning. The second thing which really struck us was the fact that all of them, a large majority of them, were saving money. I remember asking the girls in colorware if anyone was saving money, and they all put their hands up. And whether it was 5 cents, 10 cents a week, whether the money came from parents or whether the money came from work, their own economic resourcefulness, they were all saving. But they were saving in tin cups, they were saving in books, or they were saving in envelopes. And at the same time, they had plans. They had plans for what they wanted to do with this money, and whether it was to help a sibling, whether it was to help their mother, whether it was to buy a book bag, to buy that Christmas dress that they wanted, or to start a business selling chapatis. That they had a plan. And what was very, very striking, but in a way not surprising, when we asked, well, could you save your money somewhere else? We got this response, well, banks are really not for people like us. And so the stories, on some level, painted a picture about, here's the power of young people being resourceful and knowing what it is they want and what they need to be successful. And at the same time, the support systems not being there to help them or to enable them to achieve their goals in a closer way. What was also striking was the level of confidence that savings seemed to confer, and especially for the young girls, but certainly I would say across the board. It was as if the savings and that asset, no matter how modest, provided an enabling factor to think about tomorrow and to think about making a plan and to feel that they had options and they could make a choice. And so when we started to have this conversation at the foundation around if we wanted to make a difference for the financial lives, for the economic lives, but for the overall lives of young people, how can savings play a powerful role? Which brings me to my third point about approaches and new ways of thinking about this. So we know they're saving. We know they're saving in ways which aren't always safe, aren't always the most effective ways. We already know that young people will exert a tremendous influence on their economies, particularly in many of these countries. And so the question becomes, how can we enable them to become effective agents of economic growth for themselves, for their families, and certainly for their communities? And part of that gap has to do with their relationship with financial institutions. We know and we suspect that it will be extremely valuable if they can establish relationships with financial institutions early in life, and relationships which will serve them through life, and hopefully knowledge and relationships they can pass on to their children. But given their exclusion, I guess the question arose, what can we do to close this gap? And part of the answer does rest not only with the young people, but also rests with how we build and how we create more inclusive financial systems. For the institutions we have spoken to, there are many who are interested in serving young people, and particularly the young people we're speaking about, but they lack a roadmap. And they lack a roadmap which is defined by the right types of knowledge, new practice, different models, so that they can offer these services in a way which makes sense both not only for young people, but certainly for these institutions. So over the course of this past year, when we've had the great fortune to work with the 4 organizations represented by the YouthSave Consortium, we've had a tremendous opportunity to learn together about what knowledge exists and where the gaps are, and what it is we need to do to close those gaps, which is so beautifully captured in this report. one of the things, I think the powers of which there are many, of this consortium, is the fact that it does bring a multidisciplinary lens to problem solving and to really examining questions, not only just from an asset building or financial inclusion or youth development perspective, but to really test, and while we all may be experts in particular areas, we recognize that our knowledge needs to articulate with other parts of the development sphere. And so in many ways, the YouthSave Consortium represents sort of a fresh way of approaching problem solving to an old issue about really enabling young people in developing countries in difficult situations sort of transcend their situation. So today, I am extremely pleased, in fact, tickle pink, that's not my official code, but quite pleased to announce that we will be embarking on a whole new chapter of our partnership, and the MasterCard Foundation will be supporting the YouthSave Consortium with a $12.5 million grant over the next 5 years to conduct what we believe will be landmark research to really understand the financial as well as the developmental impact of savings in the lives of young people. We're absolutely thrilled because we know the questions which are being asked are going to actually generate interesting answers and hopefully for the approaches that we need. So we look forward to the collaboration with the YouthSave Consortia, and we invite all of you in the work that you may be doing to watch this space and to think about your participation. And so I thank you. I thank all of the partners. I thank Jamie for hosting us today, and I look forward to great progress. Take care.